We're going to move from sort of medical cannabis by Shoppers Drug Mart to what gets a lot of attention, certainly in the news, and it gobbles up a lot of the time, and that is cannabis retail. And the things that are happening as we look to the future. When I say future, like 3, 6, 12 months, when we will see, I believe, a massive ramp up of cannabis retail here in Canada. We've seen, what is the opposite of a massive ramp up? A slow rollout? That's what we've seen so far, but we're really on the cusp of things amazing. So to talk about tech within the retail space, it's my pleasure to welcome Joe Voss, who is the Managing Director of Leafly here in Canada, Anne Forcuzza from Cova, which is a POS system that's rolled out in a lot of retail cannabis shops here in Canada, Drummond Monroe, who's a co-founder and president of Supret, which is a really cool shop in Ottawa. We should all get on the train after this and head up to Ottawa to see it, so welcome Drummond. And Dimitri Malamed from PopCan, right here. And PopCan is a shipping container that's been retrofitted to be a compliant retail shop. And he'll talk all about it, but it's super cool. You can also get a view of it on our website because we did a show from inside one of the shops. So please, come on up, Joe, Drummond, Dimitri, Anne.
Hello.
Hello. Hi, everyone.
Check, check. Check.
Hello. Okay. All right. You have our voices. That's great. Thank you, everyone, for coming today and participating in this discussion. It looks like it's been a great day so far. I'm really excited to dive into a couple topics with these folks and share a little bit more about what's going on in the retail landscape and hopefully unpack some of the, the bigger topics that we're trying to address today in Canada and perhaps across the world. So, maybe we'll set the scene. So we're almost a year in. I definitely have a few more gray hairs, feel a little older, feel a lot more learned. And so we've got about 500 retail locations across Canada to date. The lion's share of the addressable market is currently in Alberta. We are, starting to make our way here in Ontario, although sometimes I feel like we're in a Judd Apatow film, and, we're living it day by day. So more to come on that front. A couple of the things that I wanted to chat about today obviously revolve around tech and retail and the experience and what consumers are really expecting when they come in store. But obviously, compliance is number one in Canada. So let's maybe dive into that and talk a little bit more about some of the challenges related to compliance and how technology plays a part in that from an operations standpoint. So maybe, Anne, you can unpack a little bit more around how Cova or other technologies are addressing pain points for retailers today.
Sure. So Anne from Cova, most of you guys know that we do cannabis retail point-of-sale software, and I think a really a key pain point that most retailers in Ontario and all over Canada have to go through every month are those federal compliance reports, right? And then also in Ontario specifically, those inventory adjustment periodic reports. And you can really utilize technology to automate that reporting process. I think that's a really important and efficient way to use technology for that, and it's also key why you would want a point of sale that's specifically designed for cannabis retail. I do also need to give props to the OCS as well as the AGCO, constantly iterating the way they do their files and templating, so both their files and the way they do catalogs and packaging slips can play really nicely with our software and our technology, so we're constantly working with them directly and finding ways to improve efficiencies with tech.
That's great. There's a lot of chatter, obviously, about where we're going on October 17th with legalization 2.0. I don't think there's going to be an ownable moment there, as there was last year, so it's going to be very phasal. I think we'll probably see, products on shelves, dare I say December, but probably January. realistically. So we're sprinting in a way, but it's going to be definitely a phased approach. Drummond, as Jay mentioned, Supret is just such an amazing experience. I'm a huge fan of the brand. I think that you guys are really a group of professionals who have built retail experiences, and it's a business that's really been built up of all of your collective experience, which I think is really interesting, and it really is present when you go into the store and you see little, things such as, the shopping carts. That's my favorite piece. When you walk into Supret, you have a red basket, a green basket, which indicates to your bud tender, I'm good to go, which is a green basket. A red basket basically means don't talk to me, which I think is brilliant, and you're actually catering to perhaps a consumer who actually consumes. So maybe you can talk a little bit more about your merchandising strategy and how you plan to evolve the in-store experience.
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, we try to create a more immersive retail experience. Typically, the customer journey for cannabis retail is very structured: ID check, line up to speak to a bud tender, cashier, out. There's not a lot of opportunity for organic discovery. So we built our store for customers to be able to engage with it. So like Joe mentioned, the shopping baskets, right now we have a strain can fridge so people can come in, pick out a pop can, read about a strain from their favorite LP. But all of that was built in a modular way to anticipate next generation of products. So we can move that fridge to start housing beverages and edibles, and everything we do right now was anticipating sort of product 2.0.
Okay, that's great. And speaking of brick and mortar, Dimitri, real estate is a unique challenge for operators in the space for so many reasons that I don't think we'll unpack here today.
Yeah,
but especially in rural regions. So one, I think the concept of PopCan is really incredible. Perhaps remove some of those barrier to entry for those who don't necessarily have the full capital to invest in a typical brick and mortar space. Sounds like you're solving some problems. Maybe you can talk a little bit more about your strategy and also how this might be applicable to rural regions where people just don't necessarily have access to legal cannabis yet.
Yeah, absolutely. So infrastructure is obviously key, and when we, especially when we speak about rural regions, it's quite tough to be able to deploy anything, let alone, again, as we mentioned, all the regulations. So PopCan, in essence, is quick service cannabis. So we're looking at a container that's rich. We're not talking about like a tiny little imprint. The point of our solution is it's highly modular. We're able to put them, they're Lego bricks really, so we can stack them up, down, left, right, and center as we need to. Deploy them very, very fast and very effectively to just about any corner of, well, really North America or the world. They're designed to travel the oceans really, so you can put them on a ship, you can put them on rail, you can put them on a flatbed truck. You drop them and off they go. Right now, as you mentioned, our partnership really allows us to go into certain spaces that allow us much easier to deploy in commercial real estate, and hence our partnership with Storage Vault.
That's interesting. One thing that I made note of was your honor and your commitment to working with First Nations as well. That's something that's really important to me, and also my organization at Leafly. So can you talk a little bit more very quickly about the work that you're doing with First Nations communities and how you're, let's say, either employing First Nations or helping them within their own jurisdictions?
Yeah, absolutely. So as a CTO, my job is to ensure that these containers, when they ship out, they have all the technology necessary to pretty much facilitate, of course, transactions and so much more. They're tiny little retail stores in a sense. However, when we do ship them out to First Nations, we're actually ship them kind of, let's call them empty, aside from the tech. So local contractors, right off the bat, can actually go in and retrofit them. They don't have to have any new special skills. It's all coming in compliant already. So, you're drywalling it, you're adding tile, or you design it as you wish to. And of course, focusing heavily on employing staffing in the regions of the First Nations to actually operate the retail stores as well.
That's great. It's important from an economic standpoint, and I think we all need to give a hand up to make sure that everyone is participating in the market. Maybe Anne and Drummond, you can talk a little bit more about everyone's favorite topic, which is enforcement and privacy. What's the role of technology? I think to help people prevent, organizations and let's say illicit players from abusing the system in a legal framework. So let's talk about purchasing limits, ID scanning. I think there's a lot of worry broadly in Canada, but maybe Ontario in particular. So Anne, maybe you can unpack a little bit of that from COVID's perspective.
Yeah, so first of all, so I'm in Vancouver, and I will say that in some ways April 1st was even bigger than 1017 in all of Canada. And I don't know what it is about Ontario, but you guys just do things bigger and louder. And the amount of media attention about April 1st was insane. So those of you who remember April 1st, there was a big focus in the media about this ID scanning piece and how a lot of consumers were really concerned that if they scanned the ID, their driver's license and private information would somehow get saved in their data in the government's database or in a point of sale database, and that's not true, for the record. And it was really funny because every single retailer in Ontario doesn't we have this one feature that is an ID verification feature. So it actually scans to see whether or not your driver's license is expired and whether or not you're of age or if it's a fake ID. And most people love this feature, but in Ontario, they were just get me away from that feature. And they specifically said, they're like, we do not use the ID scan feature. So I thought that was really interesting. And in terms of technology playing a role in making sure that there's a certain level of enforcement, purchasing limits, it's a big one. So not allowing your staff and your budtenders to be able to sell past the 30-gram limit. Technology, it's really easy to enforce that. And with equivalencies too. So math is hard for everyone, for me even. And using technology to convert equivalencies to make sure that you stay compliant.
What about your perspective as a retailer? I have to ask, and you don't have to share, but I personally would love to know what the percentage is of cash to card. Maybe you could share a little bit about that.
So first off, we don't scan IDs because of the pushback. Customers still feel like they're doing something inherently wrong by purchasing cannabis. I would say, Joe, to your point, it's probably around 35 to 40% still use cash, which coming from traditional retail blows my mind. We know the importance of collecting consumer data. It's just because it's such a brand new industry, we got to be careful about how we go about it. So in traditional brick and mortar, we would collect your email, your address, pretty much anything you're willing to give us at cash. And right now, we're sort of baby steps into that process right now.
Fascinating. I also do use my card at stores, for the record.
Why?
Privacy. So Dimitri, maybe you can share a little bit more about how PopCan uses off-the-grid technology. Your background is actually quite interesting to me, just in terms of your digital media background. It's a bit abstract with art. So how do you plan to leverage that with PopCan and bring consumer experience to life in retail?
Yeah, absolutely. So to your point about the background and the experience, we started in the field of pop-up, so pop-up marketing, hence the name PopCan, so pop-up cannabis in a sense. So
a Pinterest board's dream.
So it was essential for us to make sure that we applied the same technologies that we used to apply, or still applying, in fact, for our marketing executions, whether it's in the middle of a forest, you're running off a generator, whether you have a battery of solar panels, or you can, in fact, into just the main power grid. With that come tons of challenges, offline transactions, how do you provision for internet? And again, we've solved for all of these. We have industrial devices that allow us to have telemetry in every single PopCan so that we know who, what, where, and which. And of course, it's essential for us because the experience actually begins with the PopCan even before you're in the PopCan. So it's absolutely essential for us to have working, functional internet so you can actually perhaps even pre-order before you go into the PopCan itself, click and collect type of a deal going on. So I hope that answers your question.
That's great. So with cannabis, you're not just selling a product. I think you're really enhancing customers' lives, and it's deeply personal. Like when people come to Leafly, they're looking for an effect, an outcome. They're searching for a feeling. I think that's really important, and it needs to come to life in a retail environment in a different way. So how are you differentiating yourselves and doing this type of, I guess I'm going to call it special sauce, classic marketer, whether it's mobile-first technology, building community, developing content, what tools and tech are you seeing move the needle for your business, both to build that bridge for the consumer and create a relationship, but also drive revenue? Drummond.
So I think technology is complementary to the retail experience and not a way to supplement it. And I think what you see right now is a lot of hardware creating the retail experience, do-it-yourself screens, iPad ordering, and to me that's a really impersonal experience. I think it can enhance operations and flow and everything, but it's got to be in combination of both and not one or the other. At Superette, our biggest thing is about creating a personal experience and building community. So we think about it both ways. One, hardware is not a substitute to actually speaking with a bud tender and having that one-on-one education and engagement. It's more as an add-on.
True, and I suppose everyone, you don't want to be everything to everyone. So, someone who's going to a Tweed is, maybe not Superette's customer, and someone who's going to Tokyo Smoke might be craving a different type of experience. So it's really about carving out a niche for yourself as a brand.
Yeah, and we really try to avoid defining our consumer segment. A lot of people say like, this is who shops at Tweed, this is who shops at Tokyo Smoke. We really think it's everyone, and by doing so, we're not alienating anyone.
Yeah, I think one thing I've noticed even just going into a lot of the retail stores in Canada is a surprising amount of just a different demographic than I had anticipated. I expected sort of young, millennials, but I often am met with baby boomers and retirees, and it's really, I think, a positive reinforcement of breaking the stigma and being able to open up the doors so people can shop with confidence. So that to me was just something that I've noticed over time, and I think people are getting a lot more comfortable.
Yeah, my favorite fact about our store in Ottawa is that we have a retirement home that takes a bus of its residents every week.
What day is that? Is it weekly?
I'm not sure.
I feel like there's a Leafly story there.
It's about bi-weekly, yeah.
That's great.
I can't wait until you're allowed to have like senior discount day or something.
You should.
Lots of content opportunities. There's a lot of chatter about battling the illicit market. From my perspective, I think that a legal market has to be a digitally accessible market. So we're always trying to bolster our offering with technology and the technology and tools to be able to cast a net and bring people into the legal framework. So consumers crave convenience. We know this. They love delivery. They love online ordering. How are we going to get there from your perspective? Anne, do you want to take that one to start?
Okay, this is going to sound like a shameless plug, but I don't care, because something that we are super excited about is partnering with Leafly's Order Ahead. So maybe it's not in Ontario yet, right?
The regulations don't allow for click and collect services just yet, but we'll see what happens.
Not yet. However, just talking about efficiency and just having technology work for your lifestyle from a convenience standpoint, not just to use technology for the sake of it. It's a very common scenario now, whether it's buying cannabis or buying anything, you just want to pre-order something online and pick up in store. It's something that we're really excited to be a part of in conjunction with a leader like Leafly, is this ability to order ahead on Leafly and have that order be fully integrated into our COVA point of sale system, making it super efficient and easy for retailers to put their order together. And then you come back as you're leaving your work, you can just stop at your favorite Superette shop and pick up your order. So I'm really excited about that.
Me too.
Yeah, I mean, as you noted, the Ontario regulations don't allow us to do any of that right now. I mean, we'd love to be able to introduce click and collect delivery. We think it's an integral part of the cannabis retail experience, and we've seen it in other provinces. So, fingers crossed we get there.
And from our perspective, of course, being agile, being able to deploy to markets that may not have necessarily the infrastructure or the legislation for legal consumption, yet having a pop can on the outskirts, such as a storage vault location, really allows to drive people hopefully towards a legal place where they can actually shop versus still trying to partake in an illegal framework of sorts.
For sure, it's all about accessibility. So let's maybe shift gears. I'm really bullish on the global opportunity. We are pretty handheld in Canada at the moment. I'm sure that will, continue to change and evolve. But who, in your view, is innovating? Who's pushing the envelope? What excites you about some of the technology tools, or even other aspects of this industry, whether it's adjacent programming or whatever? What are you guys excited about as business owners and innovators in the space? Maybe Drummond, you want to take that?
Sure. I really don't even think we've like scratched the surface in terms of cannabis retail here in Canada. I think our hands are tied in more ways than one. I think it's really exciting to look to the West Coast US market. California really is the hub for global cannabis right now, and you can see how delivery services like Ease have integrated with retailers and the type of technology and experience they're creating right now. We can't do that yet, and fingers crossed that we get to a point where they loosen some of the regulations to create better experiences. But even from a brand and packaging standpoint, like there's only so much we can do. So I would say, yeah, California market is somewhere to look to for sure for inspiration.
I can see you fitting in there. Yep.
For me, I'm super excited about something super boring, which is compliance reporting. So even though we are a Canadian company, we do have a presence in the US as well. So in Colorado and California, in Colorado, for example, they were the first to adopt a state tracking system, track and trace system called Metric. So imagine instead of having to download these spreadsheets and submit your monthly reporting every month or a periodic adjustment reporting whenever you do something to your inventory as a retailer, imagine if your point of sale system was fully integrated already into the provinces, or in this case, the state's track and trace system. So every time there's a sales transaction, we just send that log to the province automatically. Every time there's an inventory adjustment, it automatically gets sent to the track and trace system, and you never have to submit a spreadsheet ever again.
Yeah, I think that's important because it's the minutia that the retailer has to take on from an overhead perspective, whether it's labor, time. So those little things really do add up.
Yeah, the distributed ledger, such as blockchain that was mentioned earlier, is a phenomenal piece of technology. I think that when used right is going to be something that's really effective. I'm superbly stoked about all kinds of random things you hear out there. Augmented reality in cannabis. I mean, it's an obvious. Some companies do it, as we'll have better headset displays. It will allow for a much easier device-less ideal experience, whereby you can actually get far better education, see the product without necessarily touching it, because we all know you're not allowed to touch it in most circumstances. So I think a lot of the new display tech that's coming. I'm a very tech-savvy person, so display tech really excites me.
That's great. You should start to look at the US market if you haven't already. Lots of opportunity for marketing there. So what's next? We're obviously anticipating 2.0. At Leafly, we're on the cusp of really evolving the strain classification system and enabling people to make smarter decisions around their cannabis choices. So maybe can you share a little bit more about what's next, if you can? What's your roadmap? Any partnerships, collaborations? I know, Anne, you talked about us, but anything beyond that we should be aware of?
Growing bigger and bigger, deploying more and more, and working closer. And again, education, for me, a big part of what we're doing is education, because I think there's still a ton of education that's necessary in our market, and we're playing a big role in that as well, because not all of our actual deployments are retail-based. A lot of it has to do with education as well, so education really, to me, is one of the #1 objectives.
In terms of what's next for us, just with edibles and product 2.0, like Jamin was saying, on the horizon, and then with another 50 at least retailers coming in Ontario, we're going to focus a lot of our features on making things really efficient in terms of the ordering process, the reporting process again. And I know it sounds really boring, but we get really excited about that. And
you gotta stop setting yourself up like that.
I'll stop. But really, it is, we get excited about those things, to utilize technology in order to have things be quick and efficient for retailers, so retailers can focus on the more important things like running your business at your store.
Yeah, I mean, we're excited to collaborating with you guys on the new rollout, October, and we're excited about growing the retail business, and without divulging too much, we're excited about an expanded product portfolio and lots of exciting collaborations coming.
Okay, so a lot under the hood that we can't unpack today, but that's all right. We're out of time. I have one final question, which I've stolen from someone else, which is, what's your cannabis theme song for 2019? I gave you the questions in advance. I will start. It's Eye of the Tiger. Rapid fire.
Maybe it's Start Me Up, the Rolling Stones. I feel like we're really just getting started in all of this right now.
Can't come up with anything with substance. I'll have you DM too much, it would be meaningless. It'd be
That also makes sense.
Mine's that like work song. Work, 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 work.
Oh, yep. Also makes sense, 24/7. All right, well, thank you so much. I've appreciated the conversation, and we're going to hand things off back to Jay. If you guys have questions for the panelists or myself, we'll be sitting around for a couple minutes and happy to connect.
Thank you.
Thank you.